Before cities rose from the earth, before words were written, before history had a name, there was a moment so small it left no monument behind. A human hand reached down, lifted a stone, and struck it with intention, not to admire it, not to throw it, but to change it. In that instant, something extraordinary happened. The world was no longer something to endure. It became something that could be shaped. That single decision would echo across millions of years, leading from stone blades to steel machines, from campfires to cities, from survival to civilization. This is the story of the first tools that changed human history. For most of human existence, life was lived on the edge of extinction. Early humans did not dominate their environment. They were smaller than many predators, slower than their prey, and physically fragile in a landscape ruled by tooth and claw. There were no shelters strong enough to block the cold, no clothing to shield against harsh climates, no guaranteed meals. Every day was a calculation between risk and reward, hunger and danger. Evolution had not equipped humans with fangs or armor. What it gave instead was something far more powerful: curiosity, memory, and the ability to learn from experience. Over time, our ancestors noticed patterns. Sharp stones cut flesh. Heavy rocks broke bones. Objects could be used not just as they were found, but as they were altered. This realization marked a turning point. Survival would no longer depend solely on biology. It would depend on invention. More than 3 million years ago, in the grasslands of eastern Africa, early hominins began doing something no other species had done before. They intentionally struck stones together to produce sharp edges. These were not accidents of nature. They were deliberate acts of design. The flakes that broke free were sharp enough to slice through animal hide and muscle. For the first time, humans could efficiently access meat left behind by predators. They could strip flesh from bone, scrape hides clean, and crack open marrow-rich limbs that other animals could not reach. This new food source changed everything. Meat and marrow delivered concentrated energy, and energy fuels brains. As tool use spread, brain size began to increase. Intelligence and technology entered a feedback loop, each driving the other forward. Over generations, tool-making became more refined. Humans learned which stones fractured predictably, how to angle a strike, how to plan multiple blows ahead of time. These were not instinctive actions. They required foresight and memory. By nearly 2 million years ago, humans began crafting hand axes that were remarkably symmetrical. These tools were shaped on both sides, balanced in the hand, and versatile enough to cut, chop, dig, and butcher. They were not made quickly. Some required hours of careful shaping. The presence of these tools reveals something profound. Humans were no longer improvising. They were envisioning a final form before it existed. This was abstract thought made physical. Hand axes were carried across landscapes, sometimes for days or weeks. They were repaired when damaged, reused when dulled, and in some cases, likely taught from one generation to the next. Knowledge was being preserved and transmitted. As tools became more complex, so did social structures. Teaching required communication. Cooperation required trust. Survival was no longer an individual effort, but a shared responsibility. Eventually, humans turned their attention from scavenging to hunting. Wooden spears, carefully shaped and hardened, gave humans the ability to strike from a distance. Hunting large animals demanded planning, coordination, and patience. Groups had to work together, anticipate movement, and accept shared risk. This marked a dramatic shift. Humans were no longer reacting to the environment. They were shaping outcomes within it. Fire pushed this transformation even further. At first feared, fire became controlled. Humans learned how to preserve embers, transport flame, and eventually ignite sparks intentionally. Fire tools allowed cooking, which softened food, reduced parasites, and unlocked more nutrients. Cooking changed human anatomy. Teeth became smaller, jaws shortened. Digestion became more efficient. Energy once spent on processing raw food was redirected to brain growth. Around fire, humans gathered. Stories were told. Bonds formed. Knowledge was shared. Tools were refined not just in function, but in meaning. Later still, humans began shaping bone, antler, and ivory into needles, hooks, and blades. These tools allowed tailored clothing, opening migration into colder regions. Fishing tools expanded diets beyond land animals. Decorative objects appeared, signaling identity, belonging, and belief. Tools had become more than survival devices. They were expressions of culture. By this point, humans were no longer just tool users. They were tool-dependent. Their technology had reshaped their bodies, their minds, and their societies. The influence of these early tools cannot be overstated. Every technological system that followed, agriculture, metallurgy, industry, digital technology, rests on the foundation laid by stone, bone, and fire. Tool-making trained the human mind to think in sequences, to imagine outcomes before action, to plan for futures not yet visible. It fostered cooperation and teaching, turning survival into a collective endeavor. More importantly, tools externalized intelligence. Knowledge could exist outside the brain, stored in objects, passed through hands, and improved over generations. This was the birth of cumulative culture, the defining trait of humanity. Today, our tools glow with screens and hum with electricity. They calculate, communicate, and think faster than any human ever could. Yet their lineage stretches back to a single stone struck with intention. The first tools were imperfect, rough, fragile, but they carried an idea powerful enough to transform a species. That the world could be changed, not by strength alone, but by thought. And as long as humans continue to build, refine, and imagine, we remain connected to that first moment when a stone became something more. That was the moment human history began.